I just didn't push it. O atamari e koutou, ka nui te mihi kia koutou e tēnei ata. We'll start with karakia. Do you want to do it together, people? I'm happy to lead off and join in if you know it. I karakia timataka o tātou nei hui. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he teo, he hoka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Nā mihi kia koutou i tēnei wā. Ka hui hui mai nei i tēnei hui. Ka huri au taka whakaro ki ngā tini aitua. Ko e atu ki te pō e ngā mati o ia marae, o ia takiwā, o ia motu. Haere, haere, hari atu rā. Apati hono tātou hono rātou ki a rātou. Apati hono tātou hono tātou ki a tātou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. So just acknowledging those that have passed on recently and then bringing it back to us in the room here. So kia ora koutou, welcome here. Welcome councillors, elected members from around the Greater Christchurch area. It's great to have you here too, Richard, and to all our staff in the room. Kia ora, welcome. So just to note, we've just got our quorum. We've got 10 now, so that's good. We had 9's our quorum, so we've got 10 in the room, so that's great. We can carry on. We were getting a bit close there. But so no one can leave, so we're locking the doors and all good. But do let us know if you do have to leave or step out, because that could affect things. So just apologies. I've got Tamaire, Sam, Anna, Ian, Gail, Jan and Neville at the moment. So all apologies today. Are there any others that we know of? Well, good. I think that's everyone on the list anyway. So just accept them, note them as being absent. Yeah. Mayor Dan and Councillor Nikki, kia ora. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Does anyone have a conflict of interest or anything on the agenda today? Have to ask? No, all good. Ka pai. Let's move on. There's no deputations today, so we can move on to our minutes, which are on pages 9 to 15 of your agenda. Any matters that people wanted to raise about the minutes before we put the resolution up? All good. So the resolution is to confirm the minutes of our meeting on the 7th of March. Do I have a mover for that? Mayor Phil and Councillor Edge. Any other discussion? No? All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to go on to our first report item, and that's our draft. And this is what's made the agenda pack pretty big today. This is our draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport that I know we've all been working hard on. So I know we've had the different deliberations from the Greater Christchurch Partnership hearing panel and also from our Regional Transport Committee hearing panel. So I know there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and happy to call Sonia, is it, up to the table? You always say stand, you think stand in your head, but no, it's not a stand, it's just a table. Ka pai. So thanks, Sonia. I'll hand over to you to introduce this.
Kia ora. So I'll take the paper and attachments as read. So, yep, apologies, it makes the agenda quite a large agenda. Following consultation, hearings and deliberations by the two hearings panels, the purpose of this report is to seek the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee's endorsement of the amended Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-35. And then for the committee to recommend to the Canterbury Regional Council that the draft plan is approved and adopted, and that will happen at the July meeting 2025. The report contains 4 recommendations, which we'll come back to shortly. I'll just quickly run through an overview of the process to date. So staff working across all partner agencies have developed the draft regional public transport plan. This was a refresh of the existing plan to incorporate legislative, strategic and policy changes that we've seen since 2018. Consultation was held between the 25th of September and the 24th of October, We had almost 800 individual and groups provide feedback on the draft plan, which is excellent to see that level of engagement with public transport. Hearings were held between the 18th and 25th of November, with 65 submitters scheduled to be heard. The draft plan has been updated with proposed changes following consultation and has been endorsed by the GCP and the RTC hearings panels. The GCP hearings panel also resolved further changes, which can be found in the minutes, and these have been incorporated into the final draft that you have as part of the agenda. There is a small amendment to page 80, which will be incorporated into the final version that goes to Canterbury Regional Council on the 30th of July. This change has been changed in the RTC agenda, but not for this agenda. So what you'll see there is it's an amendment relating to policy 2.9 around accessible infrastructure and services. And we're just capturing from the GCP hearings panel, Environment Canterbury will ensure services are accessible by implementing the procurements and standards in section 4 and ensuring bus destinations are easily visible on the exterior of buses. So that will be incorporated into the final version. You have 3 amendments. So the first amendment is the unconfirmed minutes. So we're looking for the hearings panel to confirm those minutes. Page 23 of that includes the committee's amendment, so you can see those clearly outlined there. The second is a marked up draft of the Regional Public Transport Plan. The red text is inaccuracies, typos, design layout, so things to kind of make the document more comprehensive. The green text is recommended changes from the officers' report endorsed by the hearings panel, so essentially those changes through the consultation process. And the blue text is the additional changes recommended by the hearings panel. So we tried to kind of make it clear in the document where those changes are. The third attachment is the final draft, which if approved, that's a draft that would be submitted to Canterbury Regional Council with that amendment we've just talked through. In terms of the process, the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, they considered any feedback outside the Greater Christchurch boundary. They followed the same process, so we followed the 2 processes concurrently, and the RTC will consider the same recommendations on Thursday next week, so the 29th of May 2025. Happy to take any questions or clarify any feedback.
Kia ora, Sonia.
Kia ora.
Any questions from members at the moment? Yep, Vicky.
I've got just some few comments, just like good ones, I think, or then some suggestions that might be useful, and then a question. So, firstly, just paragraph 1.6 or point 1.6, it seemed to me it'd be good to put a percentage of the fleet. So we say 41 buses, but that are EV, but it'd be great to see it as the actual percentage of the fleet. A comment around, there's a comment about not wanting to shift modes within the inner core. And I think it might relate more to like thinking about pricing and fares and things like that, not wanting to shift from one sort of old accessible mode to and I just want to say that people really enjoy walking or cycling. I've just come in this morning on my bike, and it's really started my day well. I wouldn't want to have come on the bus. I love the bus. I'm really positive about buses. They totally suit me sometimes. But there's nothing like jumping on your bike if you're into bikes. So I just think sometimes maybe that anxiety around suggestion that people will shift from one type of thing to a different thing rather than out of their car to something is just sometimes maybe a little bit overstated. It just needs to be remembered that actually those are good personal preferences that people might have. We've got 620,000 trips to 14.7 million Yeah, 620,000 trips and 14.7 million passengers. So I think that works out at 24 passengers per bus. So if that's correct, like that's actually a useful figure to know as well. On average, each bus is carrying 24 people. So it's just useful to, I think that's correct. I think my maths are right. And if that's so, that's actually really, again, useful number to be sort of highlighting. And then I just have one more query. There's somewhere, and I'm sure it's in here and I can't find, sorry, I'm using it's PDF, which I really struggle with PDFs to find my notes again. There's a commentary in here about models being applied, one that's patronage and one that's coverage. And I just wondered whether those are embedded in the time where we're using EVs, because the commentary about it is that one of the big benefits of the patronage side of things is reduction in is the change in emissions. But as we shift towards EVs and things, then that might just start to skew the fact that coverage is actually important. And, if we're sort of offsetting societal versus numbers of people, if we've got cycle routes and things that are benefit, particularly supporting particular routes and so on, then the bus network can integrate with that without having to put so much focus on the patronage side if the emissions is being picked up by a shift to more EVs. So just making sure that the models we're using are actually keeping up with the fact that the transport and emissions per vehicle are shifting fast. Well, not as fast as we might like and not as fast as they were, but they are shifting. So it's just be mindful of that. Thank you.
Oh, did you were you going to say a question or sorry?
Well, that last one sort of was a question, but in a way, just to think about whether, but it's more for thoughts rather than a specific expecting an answer on the spot. Yeah.
Sarah.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for all the work on this. The panel process, while there was a big gap in the middle, was actually a really good one, and we really enjoyed listening to all the submissions and those kind of things. Banks Peninsula was an issue though, so it was technically part of the broader Canterbury stuff, but people were submitting to GCP because actually that's where we're connected and those kind of things, and so it kind of fell through the gap. While there's the secretarial note that the kind of panel requested that Banks Peninsula be part of the GCP consultation next time, I'm just wondering whether that might just get lost, a little secretarial note, and whether we should add an additional resolution just so it stays in that formal part of the process. I mean, by the time this comes around again, membership will have changed, stuff, all of those kind of things. I don't want that lost. That was, it was quite an issue. Yeah.
So Sarah, just catching up on that. So, but they did get heard this time through the GCP stuff? Or?
There was a mix. Like some of the submissions kind of went to both places. Some people spoke here. I think some spoke to the regional one, but the mandate was with the broader region, and so it was difficult. Yeah, and I think and people seem to assume that they should come here. So they came and spoke here, some of them, but it wasn't clear. And we know that there are some areas of Banks Peninsula, especially that around that sort of Governor's Bay area, where they're keen to have services, but actually going to the wider region isn't helpful, even though that's technically where they should have gone. Yeah, just so for the purposes of public transport planning, Banks Peninsula should be part of the GCP area, even though it's not formally in the map.
Part of the hearing, the GCP hearing panel. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Are people okay with that? I mean, so you want us to add a resolution to this? Is that your proposal? Yeah.
Well, there's significant parts of our district that aren't included in the boundary, and I think that's part of the review topic that's being considered at the moment. So that's how we would see that. Because there's a infrastructure boundary around our district too, which cuts out quite a big chunk. So personally, I'm not concerned about that right at the moment, but it would be in the terms of the review. We did raise that around, well, actually it should be whole of districts, perhaps even further than that, to a degree. Those boundaries that were set up in those early days were just for convenience, really. And so in the broader term, as part of the review, 100% support that being considered there. I don't know if we can allow for that now because we haven't had that broader discussion together.
Even if those boundaries don't change for GCP, when it comes to public transport planning that happens and when ECAN's doing things, I just think that the areas that would be connected, and it might include Waimakariri as well, areas that would potentially be connected to Christchurch in the GCP area should be part of the consultation for that area rather than the broader, So whichever method gets used for public transport, which is a bit different to GCP.
Yeah. Governor's Bay, Diamond Harbour, they all are part of GCP area?
No,
Or not?
no, just Littleton.
I get that. Okay, cool.
Just
But
that urban
they're part
area.
of the bus network.
That's it. So I was just thinking when we consult on public transport,
Yeah.
then areas that would be connected to
Yeah.
the current
The current network.
Christchurch network,
Yeah,
Greater
true.
Christchurch
Okay.
network should be consulted.
Yeah.
Should be directed
Versus
to come to this
Akaroa,
area.
because Akaroa is a different point, and maybe that would be through the RTC because it's similar to other more sort of rural, regional
Yeah, but
networks.
I think
So your specific thing is about being connected to the current public transport network.
yeah. I mean,
of
if
Greater Christchurch.
Akaroa were to come
And that
and
makes
say
sense,
we
I
want
think.
a bus network, would that run out of? It would probably run out of Christchurch still, right?
What's that?
Akaroa, if there was something there.
Well, it's not a service at the moment, so yeah.
I know, but if they were wanting one and they were coming, no, it's not. It's
But
definitely
I do
not.
take your point, Sarah, that the areas that aren't inside the Greater Christchurch boundary at the moment, but are in the Greater Christchurch public transport network currently, they should have been included. I get that.
Yeah,
So I think
that's the key point.
specific point.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we. Yeah. Sorry.
And further to what Sarah's saying, I mean, we did, like from a Selwyn perspective, we had ones from Darfield who came and spoke to us here as well. And we do have a bus that goes from there that comes into the central city. So it is where do we draw the line on how it is going to be done? And maybe actually looking at where they end up is then where it gets included as being in that sort of Greater Christchurch ones. Yeah, because it makes sense to those people that this is where they're going, this is where that they should be speaking as well. And I totally agree with what Sarah is trying to say, is we're trying to make it easier for the ones who are actually making submissions that they are included in the right place.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm just conscious that this doesn't really affect the resolutions got on the table. So I'm keen to get them done, but I do note this is a chance to get that sorted for next time. So while we're doing this, is there a chance that we could form some resolution that makes sense that we could pass? Yeah, Sonia?
Sorry, if I just make a quick comment. Following this process, we will do a full lessons learned. So very much appreciate feedback on that and very much recognise that as the issue. Because essentially submitters could choose where they wanted to be heard. Whilst we gave them some advice on where it was most appropriate, they could make that choice. And we will be reviewing this process essentially as we lead up into the next RPTP development.
I think the key thing is that we got to get some notes from today that this is what the members are saying. So let's get that down so that can feed into the review. So something along that. I don't know, Sarah, if you're going to do a bit of wordsmithing in the interim, I'm happy to adjourn at some point too to allow those words to be written, because I just don't really want to do it by committee here because that could take us a while.
Yeah. We don't have a problem with supporting that. Maybe it's something along the lines, requests officers to look at boundaries, appropriate boundaries in time of the next review, something along those lines. That's not committing us to either direction, but it at least gives a steer to the points you're raising. Like we've got Oxford that are missing out in ours. I know they're dying to have PT. Probably don't want to pay for it, but they certainly would like to have public transport out there in those parts of our community which are excluded. So we wouldn't have a problem with that wording to that extent being added in.
So if everyone's happy with that, is everyone generally happy with that? Yep, Vicky?
Yeah, I totally am. Totally get exactly what you're saying. Are we talking here though specifically about the public transport component? You're not talking about the Greater Christchurch boundaries for everything, and they don't have to sit neatly to line up for everything. So
planning.
Which makes perfect sense.
Cool.
So
we'll just we'll adjourn just for a second to give David a bit of time to try and write that up, and then we'll be able to hopefully pass them either together if people are happy, or one by one. So just adjourn for a second. Ka pai. So yeah, we've got a new resolution there, number 5. We've just been working on. You've heard the discussion on that. It's not numbered at the moment, but Dave will get there. Are we happy to move these all together? Are people comfortable? But just going back, are there any other questions? Sorry, that people have about the report? No, all good. I just did want to note that during our annual plan hearings here at the Regional Council, we did have a lot of submissions. Obviously, we went out with questions around Selwyn public transport, and we had a lot of submissions from Darfield, and I was real mindful when I read through it to just make sure that we've got policies in this plan that actually allude to those issues that we've got, and I'm happy to say I think there are, like policies 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.7 and 1.8, which is about on-demand services, special services, community vehicle trusts, regional connections and trials are all in there, and I think they cover some of the issues we heard from our community, although there's not specific action on them right now. But I know that during our annual plan deliberations, we'll be thinking about that, and I'm sure some councillors will be bringing that up. So just so people are aware that we have some more recent issues, including things like Ashburton, also Ashburton District Council coming to us saying that they would like to have public transport considered in Ashburton urban areas in particular. So there's lots of challenges, but I think that we've got those things covered in there. Although they don't have specific actions yet, they are covered by policy, so that's really good. And also the pets on buses policy has obviously got some interest around our council table too, and obviously from constituents. So that's something that will be hotly debated, I'm sure, as well. Although the policy in the document is really good, I think there's some interest in the code of conduct matters in terms of the conditions that are put on that. So just to raise that, just so you know, there's been discussion about that. Yep, Grant?
Is this discussion? We're just...
Yeah. Well,
so
it's just a question, but yeah.
In terms
I was
of
going to go with
the resolutions, the resolution 2, that's really addressing what Sonia's just said about the addition of that bullet point for page 80 that was missed off, that relates to 2.5 of the amendments proposed by the GCP Hearings Committee. So they'll just get put in. I don't know whether we need to note that as a...
I think it's been said, and so as long as you're happy that that's been included. Yep. Ka pai.
Just in terms of what you're suggesting, in terms of the pets on buses stuff, there was a lot of discussion and there was a lot of differences of opinion. The staff recommended no change to the current one, which was a sort of a precautionary approach as we got into that. So that's something that people will have to look at. And the Metro Code of Conduct is being suggested as the way to deal with that. That can be easily amended, that Code of Conduct. It's not in the remit for the hearings panel, and that gets amended over time as things goes on without too much of a fuss. So, yeah.
Cool. So I have a mover for the resolutions. Yeah, Sarah. And seconded. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Any discussion? Do you want to speak to that? Yep, where you go, Sarah.
As I said before, this was a really good process to be a part of, and I really enjoyed being on the panel, and thank fellow panel members for that. It was really good. There was a big hiatus in the middle for a few months there, so it took a few minutes to get my head back into it afterwards. But it was really good hearing from people and then being able to address some of the issues they raised. We talked about Banks Peninsula already. The accessibility thing was really important too. So especially with the buses all the same colour, it's actually quite hard for many people to see the number of a bus coming in the distance. And so finding a way to help people who have either vision issues specifically or just ageing eyes when there are multiple buses coming to one of those stops is really important. It's sometimes hard to see which bus to flag down or flag down one just that's coming down the road if you can't tell what the number is. Rolleston is now larger than Timaru, sort of at about 32,000 people, and people made the point that while Rolleston has buses that come into Watahi Christchurch, it doesn't have its own kind of network like Timaru has My Way. And so it's time to start looking at that, and it's clear that that's the true for other areas too. The other thing to note is that Christchurch is due to grow by the size of Rolleston by 2034, so an extra 32,000 people just within the Christchurch urban area. And that's an extra 20-odd thousand cars on our roads in rush hour if we don't do anything differently. And 10 years isn't very far away, or 9 years now, to be able to get those changes so that we're not completely gridlocked just with our own, let alone the other cars that are coming in. The planning that we do now stops the city being gridlocked in 10 years' time. And it's really important that we invest wisely, and that we do the travel demand management work as well, to enable people that want to shift to have a safe, easy and convenient and cheap form of travel, and for those who need to drive places, that the roads are actually flowing and not completely clogged up. So really enjoyed this. Thanks to everyone, and looking forward to getting it passed.
Thanks, Sarah. Dan, do you want to speak now?
Just briefly, can I just, we would like to say we support this, and I'd like to acknowledge the hearings panel for the work that they've obviously done, and the staff. It's an extensive document, which must have taken a huge amount of work, and it's comprehensive. So thank you for that effort. I agree around the boundaries, and it would be good for our staff to be looking at that at the same time as we are looking at the review of the partnership. I think it's appropriate that that is considered. And public, we've often thought certainly with the partnership, that they're false boundaries. Really, it doesn't represent all of our districts and where growth is actually occurring. We've got significant parts of our district now that aren't covered by effective public transport, although they can access it at different parts through park and ride and other locations. There's still parts of our community that would certainly like greater access to that. Again, that's managing expectations, though, because with that comes additional cost, and I'm not sure that those that advocate for it necessarily would have some of the broader support of some of the communities where it may well have a financial impact, but that's another matter. PT Futures, and I know we've got the Greater Christchurch Transport Plan coming up, but it is all linked and around that work. So it's good to see a complete plan, but it's also one for Canterbury. So noting with Ashburton and Hiranui districts as well, their current, where they may want to be seen in the future. We have a lot of people from the Hiranui that come in and access park and ride and public transport from our district now. Our district, all our people within Greater Christchurch are paying for that. I'm not clear that that's been paid for broader. I'm not overly concerned about that, but it's just about cost. When you're offering a service, it's our ratepayers that are paying for that. There is a cost associated with that, just to be aware. So we obviously can't speak for those respective districts. They will need to make their views clear in due course, but we're supportive of the work that's been done here, and again, thanks to the hearing panel for their efforts. We'll be voting in favour.
Kia ora. Thanks, Dan. Anyone else wish to speak to the resolutions? Yeah, Nicole.
Generally speak. So thanks for that, and thanks for my fellow panel members, and obviously acknowledge that Neville was on it as well, and he's obviously an apology today, so unfortunately can't join us. I totally second what Sarah has said, particularly with that accessibility, and I mean there were a number of people that came and spoke to us about that, and now including that in our plan, and particularly when we're talking about Selwyn, there has been some time when we've talked about My Way services and such like, and as Sarah puts it, when we're talking about the size that Rolleston has got and not to have those things available. So now with having a policy in there that then maybe can motivate to look go down those routes of investigating these sort of services and being able to then see how whether they work or not, but actually to trial it, because that's important, because you never know until you've done a trial whether something's going to work. There's so many people that say that they will use something, but until it is actually there, we don't really know. So, thank you, and I think everything else has been said. Thanks.
Kia ora, Nicole. Yeah, Graham?
Yes, I too want to thank the panel members as well. I think we listened really hard to those people submitting verbally to us, and of course all those other people who submitted without being heard. And it was really important. I mean, this was a review of the current public transport plan, an update and a refresh. And I think the staff have done an incredibly good job in adding some new things in, clarifying things, and sort of moving forward, incorporating the government's new direction on a few things, but leaving the door open for changes to central government planning processes as well in terms of provisions for public transport. So this will proceed, and it is delivering on what's the expectation is for people for public transport, and in terms of the spatial plan. So it's really good to see. And the issue of the accessibility, that's now been incorporated into the vision statement on page 18, which is really important. So, and of course there are big things that people were submitting on about, mass rapid transit, rail or passenger, all those sort of things. But we can talk about that with the transport plan. But yeah, no, this is really good, and I'd certainly support it.
Thanks, Grant. Anyone else wish to speak? No, all good. Does the mover want to speak at the end? No, you happy? Look, I just really want to say, hey, thanks again, everybody, for their words there and for the acknowledgements of staff, and of course all the submitters that were involved too in helping us formulate the plan. I think that with the second largest city in Aotearoa, and public transport's a must, like Sarah has said. If we want to avoid gridlock in the future, we all know that it's even tough now, actually, at some times of the day to get in and out of town to where you live and where you want to get to. So those things aren't going to get any easier. But I think Sarah's right. The planning that we're doing now is going to help. But there is heaps of challenges, of course, and cost is a big one. I know for those towns in Selwyn, Waimakariri, and even, like I've said, Ashburton and others, facing the targeted rate for public transport when you haven't had it before can be quite a challenge, and that's what we got in our annual plan feedback from the people that did submit, that cost. Because when you do a trial, it has to be 100% funded by local people, because until you've proven yourself, waka kotahi and the business case process takes a while. So it can be quite confronting, and I think that's the challenge that we're all facing. And I know as councillors on the regional council, we've been sitting here thinking, well, what's the in-between? Because you've got community vehicle trusts that are trying to service some of those out-of-town places, and I think they do a sterling job, and we know that's a really important part of actually our public transport offering. But then there's nothing in between that and a full big bus system, other than the Timaru My Way system, which I know lots of people are looking at saying, how can we do that? But I do understand that it can be quite expensive. So that's just a challenge we all have to confront. But I think what I've said before as well, I think there are policies in this plan that give us a hook to allow us to push into that, and I think together we're all going to need to confront those things. But let's not also forget that we've got some challenges just to keep our public PT Futures work going, and our MRT aspirations, of course. So the challenges are massive for the team that we have here at the Regional Council to try and help that. So us all working together with CCC picking up the MRT stuff in particular, all of those things matter. So yeah, just really acknowledging us all and the challenges we face, but that we've got a good plan here to help us confront them. Plus with some new things like pets on buses that are in the mix as well. So that's all part of making public transport really successful. And I think in the last couple of years, in particular with the fare trial, that's the numbers have actually gone up massively in terms of patronage, and that's a testament to the work we've all done together. And it is becoming a real thing that people want to get involved with and get on. And I think with Te Kaha just down the road that is coming, I think that is going to be a really important thing with a really well-positioned bus exchange, that's going to be an important thing that people are really going to want to use when those big events are on in town here. So, good work, team. And let's put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Sonia. And I should have done the whole you can stand and step down now, but sorry. All good. It got a bit awkward, so I just left you there. Thank you. Thanks, Sonia. So let's move on to number 6, which is on page 255. So we're right deep in the agenda now. And this is our Greater Christchurch transport plan, like Mayor Gordon mentioned before. So, Jess, I think you're coming to the table, and we'll hand over to you to introduce this.
Might just say some points as Jesse comes to the table. Very minor in terms of process. Just reminding the committee that the designed up version of the plan didn't go out necessarily with the full agenda, but was sent and circulated separately as well as put online earlier this week. So just a point of I suppose, order, but also just didn't want to steal any of Jesse's thunder as well in terms of his being on this journey in terms of the Greater Christchurch Transport Plan. So over to Jesse.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. It's a real honour to bring us through to the committee today. This has been quite a journey working on this transport plan over the past 5 years. It's a key part of the joint work program and gives effect to the transport direction in the spatial plan. So we've been through many iterations of this over the years. Things have shifted as we've moved along through various GPSs with different governments, different funding profiles and things for various different actions that we've been taking. But we're at a point now where we have a transport plan for Greater Christchurch, one plan to reflect the direction that we want to take for our transport network, our multimodal transport network, the funding, the sub-actions and actions that we need to take in the short, medium and long term and ongoing to realise the opportunities to transform our transport network here in Greater Christchurch. It connects with the Regional Public Transport Plan, as we've just talked about. We've talked about public transport futures. There's a number of investments that we need to make into our transport network over the next 3 to 10 years, particularly, and through our respective long-term plans. Big thank you to the working group, who's put a lot of time and effort into designing up this document. I brought this to the committee last meeting. We didn't have any changes from the committee, so we went away as staff and progressed to design that document up. And that's what you see today before you. And apologies for the late agenda item, as we were right up until the last minute getting the final design aspects completed. So through you, Mr. Chair, happy to take any questions, but really this is the opportunity for the committee to endorse the plan. It'll then go up on the website and be circulated separately as well. So I'm happy to take any final questions.
There you go, Dan.
Firstly, good document, and thank you for that. Can I make one suggestion that I was really struggling to view it? I think the colours in here, dark blue with black text washes, and if I'm struggling to see it, I've got reasonably good eyesight, then so perhaps if that can be considered, the use of blue with black, it sort of, to me, that washes, and I'm no expert in that space, so there'll be designers that know that, but if you could just have a look at it, because it's we want to make sure that it actually works for those. In the version I've got, I certainly struggled to view it. Couple of points from our side is page, I'm just trying to see what page number it is here, page 33. It talks about what we have done, and at the bottom it lists specifics for some areas, but I would like, this is the second paragraph, what we've done, talks about park and ride facilities. Well, actually, if you could state where they are, because that's actually in our district, and we've put a significant investment into that. Also around just broader behaviours, we've put significant investment into cycleways, especially the Passchendaele, Kaiapoi, Rangiora, and Rangiora to Woodend. They've been major investments in our areas, and I think go a long way to change behaviours. So I just would appreciate some recognition being considered, especially when there's been other areas mentioned, and that's absolutely fine. We should celebrate those achievements because they've been significant. That's our feedback. Apart from that, we're very supportive of what's here.
Thanks, Dan. John, did you want to mention something?
Yeah, through your chair. I think going to Mayor Dan's first point, we are looking, I think, as part of this with the designer about having an online version as well as one that's print ready. So we can definitely pick up that point in terms of the colour and the display. Understand it's always a bit tricky in terms of in terms of the presentation. And probably on the second point as well, just noting that there is, as part of the recommendation, there is the opportunity to have editorial changes made, delegated through me, and obviously that's kind of confined to those editorial changes as well. So, Jesse, I'm not sure if you want to add anything further.
Yep. Any other questions, Grant? So I think we can pick that up.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That might be some editorial changes, but yeah, same issue for me. Couldn't read the diagrams, so the text, the font size were problematic. And I think, yeah, that certainly needs not just the white on the black or the blue. It's all the text. It just doesn't read well. Basically, this is being addressing in terms of the spatial plan, opportunity 6, and I'm kind of referring to page 17 of the transport plan. Where opportunity 6, talks about that last box there talks about safe, attractive, connected opportunities for walking, cycling, and other micro-mobility. There's just a slight disconnect between that box on opportunity 6 and opportunity 3, which I have raised on several occasions about developing the blue-green network, which provides a really opportunity for walking and cycling for active transport. And I'd really like to see some action on that, and I'll bring it up in the next paper as well. But the disconnect that cycling and walking really do need to be an integral part of the transport plan. Not only for urban form, but also the ability for people to get around, the ability in terms of accessibility, which is what the panel thought was really, and the accessibility through our urban environment to connect to the bus routes, to connect to the future MRT, all of those sorts of things. And it's really integral, and it's not... I think it's really, really important that we look at that, because not only that, it facilitates mode shift, which is really important to reduce emissions, to improve the health of people, and all of those sorts of things. So I just like to see some connection between opportunity 6 and opportunity 3, if that's at all possible. The other issue that did get raised in the spatial plan hearings from quite a few people was the passenger rail and where we're at with passenger rail. I'm wondering if you could just explain how we're dealing with the current planning process for considering passenger rail, because I know there's some work going on.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So you'll recall through the Mass Rapid Transit indicative business case work that the heavy rail option was discounted in terms of the preferred option being the street running corridor for Mass Rapid Transit in Greater Christchurch, and that's what we're now working on in terms of getting City Council's leading the work to designate the corridor and do the further business case work in that respect. Regional rail is something that has been suggested to Environment Canterbury to include funding for in its long-term plan, which we did in year 2 of our long-term plan. Our current annual plan process has suggested moving that to year 4. There isn't any funding from Waka Kotahi. We don't have a strategic case around seeking additional funding to support that work at this point in time. So hence why we moved that into year 4 of the LTP, essentially Environment Canterbury's LTP, to consider that work and do the strategic case work around that. That funding was around $500,000. It was set aside to do a market demand study and also a rail utilisation study. Environment Canterbury is currently considering its annual plan. We have our deliberations on Tuesday of next week. So where that funding was proposed and consulted to be moved out, but if that, leave it with our council to decide what they do with that funding at this point in time. But the steps that were taken through the Regional Transport Committee was to explain that we do a strategic case around passenger rail. We do the correct investigations to understand whether that is a viable solution in broader Canterbury. There is also work happening at a South Island level around freight and passenger movement of people on rail as well. So it's a bigger story, bigger picture than just Greater Christchurch. It's a Canterbury, South Island type discussion as well. So that gives a little bit of context of where the funding, but we need to do the work around the market demand and rail utilisation study work. And this was advice not just from this isn't from our staff, this is from, we had advice from WSP, a consultant who works in the rail sector, and gave advice to the RTC, the Regional Transport Committee, around how we should approach that work to do it properly and do it and have the strategic case to support whether or not it is a viable solution for for Canterbury and connecting into the wider South Island network as well. So,
in terms of that first point, Grant, again, John, that might be a minor editorial thing that can just mention opportunity 3, having a note there that opportunities exist within that work program to link in with the
Work across the.
yeah. Is that something that could probably be done?
Yep.
People are happy. Sarah?
Thanks. This is another one of those situations where we've got kind of chicken and egg, where one of the reasons the government tells us sometimes that they're not looking at funding things is because there hasn't been enough planning and evidence to support government funding. That's probably not the case in this specific example. And I just want to check with, so we've had information through about the draft ECAN plan, the MRT funding that ECAN had in next financial year and the 2 after. Is that still looking like it's going to stay in place in the final annual plan, or is that looking like shifting too? Because for us to be working with ECAN on that designation space and those kind of things, it does need that little bit of resourcing between the two partners so that we can get the MRT at least, far enough progressed so that at the next general election, people see that we're taking it seriously and they start going, oh, we'll support Christchurch Rail, not just Wellington and Auckland.
So, through you, Mr. Chair. So, in terms of two separate things here, rail and MRT. Yep. So, in terms of the funding for MRT, so year 2 of our annual plan at Environment Canterbury, the funding's been pushed into year 3. That was early discussions with staff at the city around the funding for doing the initial work on the MRT business case, that it wasn't, nothing for next year, but pushed into year 3. So, but again, that's part of our deliberations on Tuesday next week. So councillors will be able to look at that. That's what we consulted on. We pushed it into year 3, in terms of trying to, reduce the impost of rates on our community as well. But it was also in the early discussions around doing the next stages of the business case and designation work that the additional funding from us at this point in time wasn't required. So hence why we've moved it into year 3. But I guess if that's a council decision, they wish to bring that funding back, that's something that they can deliberate on next week.
Can I just check? So was it not required because there's currently no government funding?
My understanding is that the city staff had said that they had sufficient available funding at that point in time to do the work that's required initially to get on through next year, and then move into the following year, year 3 of our LTPs, where we would have additional funding as well.
Okay, because we need to look at that, because the advice I'd got from our staff was that ECAN had funding on budget in their draft annual plan, and so we just need to work out ahead of both of us making annual plan decisions how much is required, because we don't have anything specific in our budget on that one. Ours is out a few years, although we've got a small amount of sort of staff time and things. But I think between us, we probably need some specific resourcing. It's probably not a lot. It's not as much as was in your budget. But we need sort of some joined up advice for both councils, I think, on that one, because we do need to make progress. And the advice I'd had originally from our staff was that we couldn't make much progress at all, even on the designation staff with the current resourcing. So we need some good joined up advice on that one so we can make progress.
Yep, good point. I know it's not on this particular plan, but something to raise. And I think I did raise that last time too, about if there's anything that is needed, then we need to be told so we can all help. So I agree. Some joined up work on that would be good. We've only got a couple of days until our deliberations, but obviously the final decision's not made till later. But
happy to pick this up with John in the back row here
Cool.
After this discussion, and if there is anything specific, but that was my understanding at this point in time.
Yeah, it's just assurance for us that we know what's going to happen can happen, because we've got the right budget in place. So I think that's the key thing we all need to understand. So
Staff resourcing is there. That's more the goods and services types budget that is in question. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just being reassured that that there is staff capacity, and maybe each organisation needs to just let us know what staff resourcing is available for that work, and any small amount of consulting budget that might be needed, or if it's for specifics or whatever. Yeah.
thanks, Sarah. Any other questions on this topic? If not, Jess, you're good to go. I got that one right this time. So we've got our resolutions there in front of us. You'll see that to receive and endorse the plan. To note, the final design will be circulated, which is done. And then, like we said, the director, John here, can do some changes, as has been raised by Mayor Dan and Councillor Reach in particular. So some of those things can be picked up. And of course, noting what Sarah said, not related to this one in particular, but the MRT stuff, which we might be able to pick up in a later paper, I'm thinking. But yeah, I think it's been noted. I don't know what we can have a secretarial note or a committee note if we wanted to. So you want to do that? You happy? Okay, cool. Sweet. Do I have a mover for the resolutions? Yeah, Sarah, cool. Seconder, yeah, Dan, thank you. Oh, Nicole. Where you go, Nicole? Where you go, Nicole? Where you go, Nicole? Cool. So Councillor Reid and Councillor Templeton. So it's moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to this? Mover and seconded, you want to speak? If not, I'll open it up. Yeah, Grant, do you want to speak?
Oh, just thanks, Jesse, for giving us the lowdown on passenger transport. I absolutely support this current plan with a few tweaks. In terms of passenger rail, I suppose I was spurred on to ask that question as a result of the changes last week from the government, $600 million on rail, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a bit of a change of move in terms of support for rail, and I suppose that does have implications for our year 4 proposals, but it's really good to see, and also the trial or the trial, I think, between Dunedin and Christchurch with the Southerner journeys, just some trips, and that looked pretty impressive. Over 4 days, they had good public uptake. So, it's the future, but certainly we have to concentrate on the MRT because it's city shaping. It's the link into the PT futures, and we need to make progress on those. And of course the on page 17 there, the connections between our districts and across the city are really pressing matters for lots of people. So, but it's good progress, and we're it's a good plan to go forward with.
Thanks, Grant. Any? Yep, Dan.
Well, we support this. It's a good piece of work. It's very important. And we've been talking about MRT and PT futures for quite some time. What concerns me is the implementation that comes and how invasive it becomes on particular routes. I'm really attracted to trackless trams, and through Mayor Phil's initiative, thank you for the invitation to come along. When you had a group that came here recently, which invited both Mayor Sam, myself and Craig to be part of. It's an exciting future there, and I'd really like to see personally that initiative is explored further in terms of a trial for our area, because I think that that is where the future lies there, if we're to make this work, where it's less invasive. The technology that's there, where autonomous, there's magnets in the road surface. I realise that perhaps LTSA is not quite well, and NZTA is not necessarily caught up, or the regulatory side in that space yet around autonomous vehicles. But the technology is certainly coming, and there's lots of opportunities starting to present, including the ones that were here a few weeks ago. That, if you look at what's happened in Auckland and just how it shut the CBD down effectively, we were up there. I was up there about a year or so ago, or we're both up there actually. It's heartbreaking for those business owners in that area, how much disruption it's caused. Big stores like Kirkcaldy and Staines, not Kirkcaldy and Staines, Smith and Co. Pardon me, yeah. Kirk's is shut as well in Wellington, but big iconic stores like that. Potentially at that stage looking at closing because of the disruption that's occurred. So I think we just need to be real about that, and where we can look at less disruptive opportunities in trialling those. We've got a great opportunity here, and we should be putting our hand up to do those things. Brisbane apparently has this in place, and there are other areas looking at it. In New Zealand, apparently Auckland are considering, why shouldn't we be the first in that space? I just put that out there. I really liked what I saw. I don't know all the implementation consequences, and that's something that I think we should be exploring further. But moving people around efficiently and effectively is what it's about. Also, we've got an excellent bus network now, I think. Really good bus network. I'm a bus user myself, and I enjoy getting on our buses. It's a very effective, efficient way to get in from my area, particularly or our area. And peak times 45 to 50 minutes to get in is pretty damn good, really, when I think about it. So that's where we've got to maximise what we have as well. But for the future, rail, I always have been like the idea, Councillor Edge. I wait with interest to see where perhaps where some of those initiatives may lie in the future. We've always been told that it's a significant amount of investment to get rail and to use passenger rail. It's prohibitive in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have aspirations to it, but this concept of trackless trams seems to be where the world is going, and it's something that we should certainly have our eyes open to. But the rest of the plan is excellent. It's picked up the points that we're all interested and want to see, and ultimately it's a plan that hopefully we can be. When we recently were in a meeting with Minister Bishop, it was a couple of months ago, they were certainly wanting to see this sort of work and to see us present that to them and see what opportunities lie in the future. So having done this work presents us a great opportunity to present the case for investment for Canterbury, for Greater Christchurch and Canterbury.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else? And I'll come back to you as the mover, Sarah. Vicky?
Yeah, and that is obviously lots of work been going on. So it's great to see all these things sort of coming together into these really neat documents that make it really clear what the aspirations are and what's possible, which is where the implementation comes in, actually seeing it delivered. I'd just really like to support Tautoko Councillor Edge's point about the blue-green infrastructure and the fact that, you know, we have the spatial plan and the sort of transport plans come out of that. But the point of the spatial plan is that the various 6 opportunities and the key moves, they integrate, can support each other. And I know when I looked at the NPS for urban development, when that came out, and the NPS for fresh water, it felt to me like there was a trick missed, because the blue-green stuff actually supports both of those things. So urban trees, stormwater management, shade for people walking and cycling. You don't have aircon when you're on your bike and on your feet, and with climate change as well, you know, just you can frazzle and it puts you off and jump in the car. So just really emphasising that integration is really important to keep sights on when we do these pieces that are particularly focused on particular parts of the plans, the implementation. Just keep the horizon wide as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Anyone else? Back to you, Sarah.
Kia ora. I mean, Greater Christchurch currently has the slowest commute in the country. And basically the reason is because we have more cars being used at single occupancy rates and fewer people in public transport. Mass rapid transit, or turn up and go, or whatever we end up calling it, of whichever mode, whether it's trackless trams or light rail, is essential for the future of the city so that we're not completely gridlocked. And I just wanted to make sure that we don't confuse it with Auckland too much. The system that they've got, is underground. It's so much more difficult to build, so much more time consuming and disruptive. If we ended up going with light rail here, it would be above the ground, so much easier. It's still disruptive though. I'm mode agnostic, but I don't want to scare people unnecessarily before we have that conversation. The key thing for us really is Greater Christchurch actually is in that advocacy space, that relationship with government, and how we convince the government that we're worth investing in and that we didn't just get our share as we were rebuilt through the earthquakes. That was bringing us back to where we had been. It wasn't improving us for the 21st century like Wellington and Auckland. We're invisible on the national stage currently. No one talks about Christchurch up in Wellington or anywhere else, and that needs to change. We have the most enormous opportunity here, and we offer a lot for the rest of the country when it comes to capacity, but not if we're all stuck in traffic. And that's what the Greater Christchurch spatial plan and transport plan together will help us achieve. Kia ora.
Thanks, Sarah.
The comment, Sarah, that we're invisible on the national stage, we're always talking about Christchurch whenever we're in Wellington and the Greater Christchurch. So I just want to make that clear, that there's a comment you've just made that actually we're always singing from the same song sheet when we're there.
I don't think it's a criticism of what we're doing, Dan. It's more that, you know, a reflection of funding from central government doesn't feature for us. Yeah, well, that's how I took it. So I think, you know, we're all doing a good job. But in terms of the funding that we've potentially been getting, especially for transport, we know the stats that come through the Regional Transport Committee that we got 5% of the national bucket, whereas we probably should be getting, this is not just this government, but successive governments, we should be getting 12, 13%. So that's our challenge. We need to keep showing what we've got and what we need, and I think that's what Sarah's encapsulated a little bit. So that's what these plans will do, but we do need to get on with the work.
Yeah,
so,
and let me clarify though, because it's a public perception rather than a what's happening. Yeah. Like, so if you talk to residents in Wellington, Auckland, no one talks about Christchurch unless they've been here to visit and they go, oh wow. But people don't see a need for investment here. And one of the things we know about politics is it's often driven by public mandate and public perception, not just what politicians know in the background. And so having that more public advocacy, not just behind closed doors, is really important. Thanks.
Cool. Okay, let's put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is item 7. As you can see, this is our joint housing action plan. I'm going to call John. You're up for this one, so thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I think at the last meeting, I could hardly talk and kind of spoke to a number of the items. And then I think for the remainder of these items, this being the first, I'll be able to hardly stop talking, I think. So a meeting of contrasts. So the intent of this report is effectively to formalise the feedback provided by the committee members at the March meeting. We had a good discussion and really seeking to put this through as a report for endorsement. The process we've followed over the last few months has been summarised in the handful of slides that has been attached as part of attachment B to the report. The completion of phase 2 actions intended to be done in tranches so that the first work on that first tranche can begin next financial year and intended to move forward quickly on the back of feedback from the committee. With those more complex actions and those with financial implications can then be further progressed and scoped and assessed for subsequent consideration by the committee. Feedback provided by the committee in March is outlined in the report and it's reflected in the actions that have been put forward for phase 2 in attachment A. I want to draw attention probably to 2 new actions that came through that discussion. The first is there in respect to mana whanua's need for support in navigating the processes and requirements for generating housing, and that's put forward in terms of exploring a navigator-style role. The second is seeking further clarity in respect to what the advocacy ask would be, particularly around inclusionary zoning, or probably want for a better word rather than inclusionary zoning is more about probably an affordable housing value capture mechanism. What that looks like, and that has been outlined again there as well in a bit more detail to give a set of asks for the committee to consider. And then within that as well, the report provides next steps and timing around it. Separate and related note as well, not necessarily in the report specifically, but just wanted to give an update to the committee and members in respect to the private bill for Otatahi Community Housing Trust. In terms of broadening its operation by Christchurch City, the private bill has been drafted and Otatahi Community Housing Trust is in the final stage of the pre-checks with the parliamentary officers of the clerk and council. And the next phase will be the public notice period. And then once everything has been approved in terms of that kind of a due process, the bill will then go through the legislative process as anticipated to take somewhere between 3 and 9 months. And of course, they're seeking to expedite that as much as possible. So there's the introduction points. Back to you, Chair.
Questions, members, for John? Anybody? Yep, Dan.
Thank you. And thank you for that introduction and the work. The terminology that's in here around inclusionary zoning, and I note that it's there, that this will be coming back to us because I think we've made it clear a number of occasions that we don't support that for our district. Appreciate that might be something for others that want to explore. So just want to make sure that we're not locked into this at this point, because I just want to have that clear, because that would be something that I would need further mandate from my council on.
Through you, Chair. Very much so. It's about right-sizing the amount of work that needs to be done in assessing and scoping to bring it back to inform that next step of decision-making. Hence, it's sitting in that kind of more complex kind of grouping of actions as well. So reaffirm that as well through Mayor Dan.
Do you have a question, Nicole? No? Sorry, I thought sort of sweet hand go up. Grant?
My question was going to be to Mana Whenua, but they're not at the table today. In terms of that navigator item, I was sort of wanting to understand where Mana Whenua were at in terms of preliminary proposals or timeframes, infrastructure issues, finance. What's the where are they at in terms of being able to push that forward in terms of housing?
Through you, Chair, I think it's very hard for me to answer, and I don't wish to necessarily talk on behalf of Mana Whenua, but I think it's an important kind of query and point, and that's to the premise of the navigator role in terms of there is a lot of complexity in terms of delivering housing, and that was the feedback we received from the Manawa representatives at the previous meeting, and that's how that's kind of been couched, but there is an exploration of that and that role and how that fits with other potential roles and activities already underway.
And I think we're going to probably raise it in the next item too about the Kāinga Nohoanga strategy that is coming. So we've had some confirmation that that work is coming. It's just taken a little bit longer than was thought, but that'll help as well. But I think a role that's been put forward here is there's so many complexities around some of the Māori land issues. Obviously, collectively owned land's one thing, so it's not as simple as just one person owning one block. Some blocks, like I know a block that I'm a shareholder in, has 800 owners. So just so you know, it gets a bit complicated. And then some of those shareholders have passed away for quite a number of years because successions aren't perfect in the Māori land system. So that doesn't help. So there's a lot of administration in terms of trust, but also I know the historical issues, which I know Waimakariri and even Christchurch have done through district plan, and maybe Selwyn has too through their most recent district plan, is often in the past the Māori reserves were zoned rural because that's where they often sit. But of course, there's aspirations to be able to live there and to build houses there. So they sort of sat sort of at a bit of a conflict with older district plans, but that's been tried to be worked on through Kāinga Nohoanga policies within plans. So, you know, navigating all that as well is complicated. So I think a navigator role would be really helpful. So it'd be good to support it. Yep.
Supplementary. I thought I heard yesterday with the net budget announcement that was something to do with Kāinga Ora funding being removed. Are you aware of that, or is anybody aware of that?
Any response from down there?
Kia ora, Jonathan Fraser from Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. And I think, excuse me, I understand your question in regards to funding for Kāinga Ora through the budget announcement. The announcement from budget was in regards to community housing provision or social housing provision, of which there was no determination whether or not Kāinga Ora would be party to accessing that funding. That would be a decision made through the rest of calendar year 25. But there were effectively funding set aside for 650 to 900 places of a mixture, social housing and affordable housing, so a flexi fund which has never been used as an approach before, for delivery from July 27, which is when the current funding runs out. I would offer that with some caution, noting that investment from government has a heavy focus on priority locations, which unfortunately predominantly is in the North Island, and my role as director for the South Island within HUD is to advocate for more funding and understanding the need in this location so that we can hopefully get more. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a good update.
Thank you, John. Kia ora. Any other questions on this matter? No? Yeah, and I note what you said, Dan, too, and I saw that the orange ones there that had assess and scope. Obviously, that's more work coming, so I'm sure we'll all be involved in that as those get assessed and scoped up versus the green ones there that are really going to be progressed. So thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for these resolutions that we've got in front of us? 3 resolutions there. Yeah, Councillor Edge, happy to move. Seconder, Councillor Mayor Gordon. Any discussion? Do you want to speak to that, or we had a good discussion already? Ka pai. So happy to put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. And so let's move to number 8 on our agenda, and that's our Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan Implementation Plan. And over to you again, John. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'll speak briefly to this. There is a document sitting there as well. The implementation plan for the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan is a requirement of the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. It provides forward-looking milestones for how the spatial plan will be progressed by partners over a long horizon. The development as planned is drawn upon from similar plans developed by other urban growth partnerships across Aotearoa, and it effectively replaces what we've seen as the joint work program, and includes probably regular reporting every 6 months to the committee, and then offers the opportunity to review the plan and its actions annually, and ideally identifying those that have been completed over that period of time. So it is really, I suppose, the fleshing out of what you've seen in the joint work program. Just some terms.
And like I said before, on the Kāinga Nohoanga strategy, we've had conversations, both John and I, with I talked to Tanya Wati at Whitiora, and also John has spoken to, I think, Mike Davidson, who's working at Whitiora as well, just to get an update on where they're at. And I believe they said 30th of June potentially to deliver that. I know they've got, it's taken a bit longer than they thought, but they're getting there. That's what I understand. So, any other questions for John at the moment on this? No, all good. Cool. Well, let's put this up. Is there a mover and a seconder for the resolutions in front of us? Anyone? Yeah, Sarah, happy to move. Mayor Phil, happy to second. Ka pai. Cool. Do you want to speak to this? Anybody? No? Yeah, Grant, you want to chat? Where you go?
Is really bringing up that issue of where we're at with blue green infrastructure, and we talked about that coordination between Opportunity 6 and Opportunity 3. I was particularly concerned about on page 268, item 4.7, suggesting that the outcomes associated with open space and community infrastructure, which really sits with Opportunity 6 and 3, was going to be considered as business as usual. It's really important that we don't consider it as business as usual. We need to advance. They're all black. If you look at page 281, the environmental focus there is all black at the moment. Nothing started. It definitely needs a start on that first item about developing an integrated blue-green network strategy aligned to the principles of this, that aligns with the expectations of our community when they came to us for the spatial plan hearing. It's hui mai consultation process, the GC 2050 process. Thousands and thousands of people in our community wanted to see an environmental improvement within our city. And it always got, even in after the earthquake, the city sticker process, the desire for a quality environment came right through that whole early 2000s or mid 2000s. So it's there in the psyche of our city, and it is part of that city shaping success. It worries me that in the central offices group, are we strong on urban design, landscape architecture to help liaise with our transportation planners to make sure that the focus is there and it's not lost, it's not an add-on. I know that that item 4.7 is suggesting that these things will be done, but it sounds like it'll be done on an ad hoc basis, and we need the strategy. There needs to be consistency on how we go forward with our urban spaces, not only within the city, but Waimakariri, Selwyn as well, so that there is an expectation that's delivered on the ground. And I say that because that blue-green stuff connects open spaces, improves accessibility, it makes use of, as Councillor Southworth was saying before, of our drainage systems, streams, and all those sort of things. The other thing that it will do is provide some clarity for the big greenbelt areas that we've suggested on, what page is that, Phil? On page 273, with the spatial plan map. They're unresolved, but the implications for that is huge for the city about giving a little bit more certainty about what that might look like. So a bit of visioning needs to go on early rather than late. Otherwise, we'll miss those opportunities if we're relying on ad hoc developments, private plan changes, and all those sorts of things. So my plea really is that we change that, and it'll be up to, I suppose, John. But just to get the feeling from this committee, do they agree with what I'm suggesting here? And if so, next time we come, can we have some time frames in order to address the environmental issues on page 281? Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Look, and I don't know how we completely resolve that now, Grant. But I think if John notes that, because I understood that we had blue-green strategy in the climate action plan as well. So, yeah, I don't know if staff can help us with that, and I don't know if that got prioritised within that for action anytime soon. But Nikki, you might be able to add to that.
I was just going to say, just to put your mind at ease, Councillor Edge, that our council is actually leading in the CCPP, the blue-green network strategy. And in our council area, the Aroha Te Awa project takes a leading edge on that. And it is alive and well, so fear not.
Yeah, and I do know that each council's doing their own work as well. I know that in City, for example, we've had a lot of work like Te Kudu over in the sort of southwest area of Christchurch, over where I live. There's been extensive work. I suppose it's just that it's not together, so all of our different strategies potentially aren't together in one place to show that. But potentially it's not too hard to bring that together just as a start of saying these are all the separate pieces of work that each council's doing in this space. Environment Canterbury's also got some other work that we've done in the past at Ahuriri, a bit out of the city, but on regional parks and stuff. So maybe there is a chance to at least bring that together in some sort of mapping exercise at least. So, I don't know, John, if you want to chip in.
Yeah, through your chair. I would say that we are seeking to work alongside our colleagues within the Canterbury Mayoral Forum who are progressing the Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan, in particular around the blue-green network infrastructure for the region. But we are cognizant that the direction we'd received prior or to this point has been that we're prioritising other things at the moment ahead of the blue-green network infrastructure strategy. And that's how it's been translated then in the implementation plan sitting before you. But that's not to say we are not working and seeking to collaborate with our colleagues at that regional level as well, knowing there is that interrelationship, but also water only runs one way in particular. So that importance about looking at that broader network. But it's something, again, that we can continue to update through future Secretariat updates as well in terms of that work. But also we would just seek to support that work progressing through the Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan as council.
So, and maybe that's an important note to make, that that could be noted somewhere in this plan, that work is happening and we are working together, and that at least, like I said, maybe it's not a strategy because that's definitely the action here, that's something for the future, but at least the work's been done to pull all the different work streams together that each council is doing that has a relationship to an eventual strategy, that might be something that would be good, John. So that could be in the next update. That's something that gets mentioned. They sort of follow up on all that work. And of course, like Nikki said, that Waimakere is leading that action underneath the Climate Partnership Plan. So cool. Siki, you got a...
Yeah, just speaking to this, I know when we coined the phrase or used the phrase the blue-green network, that I was really tried to emphasize that we're not talking about like a network as such. It's the whole catchments are really important. It's not just the linear parts of the rivers and the connections to the parks. It's much wider than that. And so it's very difficult to sort of weave in things retrospectively. Like as development's occurring, it needs to have that blue-green concept applied to every single development, every opportunity, every bit of new road, everything. You know, if it can be front of mind to think what opportunities is there, that's how we'll achieve an outcome that actually delivers healthier rivers and so on. And so it's just that, you know, the way it's being, again, it's compartmentalizing something that actually needs to be integrated, and it sounds like that is happening, and it's just really making sure that that's really clear. And of course, ultimately, it's the district plans is really where this stuff gets delivered. And one of the things, for example, I noticed that we've got in here about intensification, using incentives for height and for densification. Those incentivization techniques can also be used to incorporate more blue-green infrastructure at the property scale as well. So that's the sort of thing where, you know, trying to encourage more green roofs, rain gardens, etc., permeable paving, all of those things. It's little by little by little by little is how we'll get there. So it's sort of, we can't really park it and then bring it in later. And I appreciate that's not what I'm hearing, but it'd just be really good to see that really well captured, that it's all integrated and it's not park something till later.
Thank you. Yep, Nicole.
So, and just to raise that we are on Selwyn looking at our blue-green network at the moment, and we've done tree canopies stuff that's been in the process is coming back to sustainability and climate change committee as well. And so, yeah, we are working on all of that. I wanted to bring up, so top of page 278, and it's got about the priority areas. I'm talking about supporting turn up and go public transport services to from Rolleston at the key district transport hub. And there's no, I mean, it's black for funding for that. And so the press article that Sarah was talking about with having about the congestion and the time it's taking to get into Christchurch. Well, we've got a very good service, the 85 buses, very well patronage in the mornings. The afternoons, not so much because of the timing of the buses, and I understand it's because, you know, trying to have buses available to be able to do that service. But what was highlighted by the press when they specifically looked at Rolleston, and I've seen this myself, is that there's no point in getting on at the last stop, that the pickup at Kidman Street, which is near the council headquarters, and it goes onto the motorway, because the buses are full before they're reaching there. So if you wait there, quite often you will just see the buses go past. So this is where we're at. This is people standing on the bus and going on the motorway. So it's great. It's getting patronage. There's obviously not the fund. There's difficulties with funding now. With government has changed its priorities, and that's mentioned in this report as well about changes in that regard. But we all know we need to be moving more people quicker, and having public transport doing that is how we need to go going forward. But if people can't, and I've brought this up before, if people can't get on the bus and can't guarantee that they will get on the bus, they are not going to take the bus. So we're going back. We'll be going backwards, and so I'm not sure what we can do for now, but it still needs to be mentioned that, you know, these little wins that we have had, where is that going to end up going forward? And we're just going to have more cars coming on the roads. And, you know, now that we can go 110 along the motorway, we can get to that stop out the end of the motorway a lot quicker. And that's such a win, apparently. Anyway, sorry, that's my...
All good, Nicole. We are, that is part of our deliberations on Tuesday. It's been part of the annual plan process, obviously, with the Route 85 and how we uplift that. So that's definitely part of our deliberations this week. So I look forward to that debate around this table with our councillors. But I believe there's some good support for that. So because we know the issues that you've just raised. So, Dan?
I think you've just answered the point, actually, because I was just going to ask what is the fix for that, because you have raised it here a number of times, and it obviously you've got those sort of issues that does need resolving.
No,
but you're considering that from the
we
sound of it. That was all I was
specifically
gonna
consulted
ask.
on that, and we got good support from the Rolleston community. So that's good. All good. Any other discussion on this, or shall we? Yeah. Grant?
Sorry, just quickly, we talked before, this page 78, we talked before about where the MRT work was. Is what we're talking about, is it related to sort of about the middle of that page, above the black section, MRT for Greater Christchurch, secure route protection through completing the statutory process?
That's the
what
item,
started there. So
I
that's a
believe.
bit further down the track. But we're obviously underway with a bit above, which is sort of in the planning stage, the detailed business case. And is that where we're at? So we just need to make sure that we're...
Yeah, just the assurance, like I think Sarah raised before, this assurance for all of us that we've got the right budgets we need for our staff and all goods and services. So I think we do need to catch up on that, and I'm sure we can get that behind the scenes and help us with our deliberations that we're both going to have. So, ka pai. Any others, or should we put this? I think we've got our mover and second, haven't we? Yep, cool. Put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. We'll go to item 9. This is our Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan Annual Report. And John, you're up again, page 287 of our agenda.
Through your chair. Again, a few points before I open up the discussion. The annual report and implementation plan form part, or key parts actually, of the overall monitoring and reporting framework for the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. That's picked up, I think, in Figure 1 in the body of the cover paper, page scarily 295 of the agenda pack. And given, I think probably just important to note, given we're 1 year on into the implementation of the spatial plan, there are some indicators that are still under development, and these have been identified in the annual report document themselves, and we're going to be working on those between now and this iteration of the annual report and next year's iteration. And again, I suppose we're looking at progress, not perfection here as well. There will be further, as I said, there'll be further refined by partners, effectively as part of that continuous improvement. This annual report positions the Greater Christchurch Partnership quite strongly across the nation's urban growth partnerships, just in terms of the structuring of the annual report and being able to provide that in one cohesive document to members in the committee, and feel like this has really been cracked, I think, with a little bit of envy from other urban growth partnerships by the officer working group, able to assist by Jenny and the Secretariat. They've really worked hard as a team to advance and I think really develop this significantly on in terms of what that looks like. I just draw your attention to the executive summary of the actual annual report itself, which highlights some of the key changes we've experienced in Greater Christchurch and some of the notable achievements as well by the partnership in the last year. And just noting as well that there are, no doubt, and I know there are many more achievements for each partner organisation around the table as well over the same period of time. So on that point, back to you, Chair.
Any questions for John on this one? Yep, Grant.
Thanks, John. page 289, item 6.6 talks about one gap in the indicators being well-being measures. Now that the Canterbury Wellbeing Survey is no longer undertaken, can you, going forward, I think it's probably really important. What's the situation with the Wellbeing Survey? Who normally would do that?
I might ask Jenny if she can come up to the table on that one. That's a good question. Not being necessarily familiar with all the detail on all the reports. Grant?
Thank you. So that is now sitting with Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand. We did meet with them to understand their intention to continue to do that. They aren't. There isn't any further fundings. So, and essentially the way that they're moving is to bring everything up to kind of a national level. So there is no further surveys to be undertaken.
I mean, I don't know how we could overcome this, but without going back to the blue-green infrastructure stuff and the health of the environment, I mean, there's issues to me in terms of indicators about have we done our job right in 30 years' time. Is, air quality, health and well-being. That's mental health, physical health, happiness, sense of place. The human factors that help support the delivery of this. So it would be a matter of maybe we had at some point maybe consider how we could include those fairly important indicators somehow and how they could be funded.
Through you, Chair, I think as the report acknowledges, it has been challenging finding data sets that both kind of give us time series or trend data for us to use and align to the outcomes that we're seeking and pursuing through the implementation of the spatial plan, but also looking at the specific extents of our area that we're looking at as well, and so we can have that comparable, I suppose, approach both in time as well as geographically. And in the report, we're saying, I suppose, looking at our approach has been principled at trying to look at and utilise existing data sources in the first instance. So that's definitely something where we are, I think, as going back to my earlier comments or introductory comments about going, okay, we know we've got some gaps, and then through from this version to August 2026, the next annual report, how do we progress that and how do we fill those gaps as well, and bringing that back to this committee again for consideration, but just acknowledging that we're 1 year on and we are, I suppose, it's a work in progress, but really, I suppose, around continuous improvement about our reporting going forward too. But definitely take on board, I think, those points around those aspects of what we'll be looking to monitor.
Yeah, I think we've got some other questions. So, Sarah.
Just off the back of that one. Yeah, just off the back of that one. And when we're looking at various data sets, the Canterbury Wellbeing Survey has been really useful for a range of things with a different number of organisations across the city. And while our mandate isn't for Canterbury, I'm just wondering whether there's something that either we could pick up or the Mayoral Forum could pick up in looking at what it would take for us to take over doing that survey. Because having those long-term data sets over a range of things since the quakes, I think, will benefit generations to come. So if we could work out what it would take to do that, and then we can make a decision on whether we could do like those data sets but just for Greater Christchurch, or whether the Mayoral Forum might like to take on a responsibility for checking in on the wellbeing of residents across Canterbury.
I think Whatu Ora stopped their one, so we need to note that. But what are the other ones that happen if the Canterbury Wellbeing Survey is one that's carrying on? Then I think the staff can go and find out if that's a data set that we could use. So, like John said, if there's a gap, try to fill it. So maybe come back and let us know, John, if that's a possibility that Sarah's raised there. Vicky?
Yeah, thank you. I had sort of similar to Councillor Edge around the sort of well-being, but I'd wondered, maybe median or average wage, for example, might be better than GDP or alongside GDP, or employment figures would be another one. So it's at least giving an indication of that, population's able to engage, to achieve resources that they need. Another aspect, so you're nodding your head, so I'm thinking those might be figures that are available and that Canterbury specific, if not Greater Christchurch. So maybe have to think about some of those things that we could use. I've on the public transport side of things before, I've asked a few times, and actually when we were doing the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan and some of the surveys or submissions and things we got come through, I asked a few times about looking at it from a gender perspective, because I think there are well, I know academics and data shows that there's differences between the experiences of men, women, gender diverse, and I don't see any of that reflected in anything that we do. And I feel like that's something that's actually really important. And I know, for example, I went to a workshop on double energy vulnerability, where people are struggling to afford transport and energy, and I would argue food as an energy source as well. There's a sort of nexus of those things, and it is more impacting on women, solo families, women with children, than men. Similarly, I think some of the housing issues and children in motels and that type of thing. So I'm just wondering if there's some nuance in here where we could be looking at some of those particularly vulnerable groups and actually looking at some indicators that help to keep us focused on some of the most vulnerable in our communities and making sure that there is some equity. And obviously that's been a really big issue just in the last week about the equity for women in particular and low paid women. So I'd like if we could maybe have a think, or maybe you have some ideas off the top of your head here, but otherwise we could have a think about some of the indicators around some of that side of things.
Through you, Chair, I think the starting point for us is looking at the requirements around the national policy statement in terms of the annual report. We are very conscious about not wanting to increase, I suppose, the variety of indicators and reporting that we're doing, but we can definitely have a look at it in terms of looking at what the nuance is. I suppose the challenge that we're always going to come across is for that principle, which I mentioned earlier in response to Councillor Edge's question, which is around what data sets are available that we've already got. And that's something that we're probably quite constrained with. So that's probably just the one limiting factor. But take that on board and we'll have a look at what is available and then consider that and bring that back as per the next annual report.
So can I just to add to that, when we're collecting our own data, so for example, I know I asked for with the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, I think it was, and the submissions we had, where they could do some gender analysis on that. And I don't think that the category of what gender had been captured. So whilst we had lots of data around age, and actually incidentally the other day I saw some data around transport where there wasn't a difference between the age groups, but there was a difference between genders. And so I think it's actually really important to bring that in. So maybe when we're collecting our own data sets in future and asking for submissions, if we could look at capturing that so we can check and go, what, there's no difference. That's cool. That's fine. But at least let's check it. So that's just for going forward. I appreciate it's not necessarily something you do this year.
Thanks, Vicky. Any other questions? If not, Phil, you happy to move? Do I have a seconder for this? These motions? Anyone keen? Yeah. Councillor Giddon? True. Well, let's keep moving. Any discussion? Do you want to speak to this, Phil? No? Councillor Giddon, do you want to speak to this? No, all good. Anyone else wish to speak? Oh, Grant, again.
I just want to congratulate the Secretariat for the good work that they've done. We've achieved a lot since the spatial plan was signed off. Good reporting and it's excellent. Good.
Cool, ka pai, Grant. Thank you. Let's put this to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. And just note that thanks the staff for that. Let's go to number 10. This is our priority areas program update. And John, you're up again.
Through you, Chair. I think you're probably going to be sick of my voice, I think, by the end of the next item and the final item. So I think we're going to get briefer over the last two. As a key move within the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, there's been a focus in establishing the program with partners over the past 9 months for progressing the development of priority areas and enable a regular reporting mechanism through to members here around the table. The program itself provides a bit of a place-based focus to the coordinated implementation of the spatial plan by partners. This report and its priority areas on a page, which is the attachment, starts to introduce that program to the committee and gives a bit of a sense of the baseline on which partners and officers will progress from. It's noted that the committee will receive its next update in respect to the priority areas program in December, the December meeting, and then every 6 months after that. And of course, progress will be reviewed annually as part of the review of the implementation plan and the details of each of the actions within each priority area then updated as required as well, really providing that alignment but also that visibility as well about what's occurring and what has progressed and ideally completed within each of those areas. So on that point, back to you, Chair.
Any questions for John on this one? Grant?
Just quickly, two things. Page 367, 5.4. I'm just wondering where we're at with advancing issues related to public-private development and incentives in thinking about those economic issues that might help advance progress on priority areas in terms of implementation. Actually, it might be. Yeah, just where we're at with that.
Through you, Chair, it's fair to say it's a challenging, I suppose, environment in terms of being able to use any of the typical planning levers that we've had in the past in order to incentivise and attract development in these locations. We are working with partners, including central government agencies, in respect to doing some further work into understand what some of those incentives could be. And we look to be advising that through these regular updates as well. But it is something we're mindful of in respect to how do we incentivise the type of development in the locations identified as the priority areas. And so it's a live kind of consideration for us being partners in respect to that. And as and when I suppose we get some of that advice, we can bring that forward in terms of future updates.
Quick supplementary on page 368, the diagram there that you've got, and the little descriptions, you've got the word barriers in there. I'm wondering if we could make that or consider putting that as opportunities rather than barriers, just because it's a more positive word. But anyway, that'll be up to you, John.
Something for next time, John? Yeah. Think about?
Okay.
Not yet. We're just getting through. You got to move. Yeah,
there we go.
I could sense that. Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, we had deliberated a lot in terms of the wording and pertaining to that. So, take the chair's point there in terms of next time. Oh.
Kapua, anyone else got a question? No? You got to move it. Phil, you happy to move again? Got a seconder for this one? Councillor Edge, cool. Any discussion? No? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, you're ahead of the game there, Phil. Kapua. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. So number 11, that's our secretariat update. Where you go, John? Already? Oh, awesome. I'll note that. That's good.
Through you, Chair. I'm noting the mood in the room, and so I will keep it brief. A few things to highlight in respect to the Secretariat update report before you. First one, in terms of the partnership review being progressed by Martin Jenkins. It's currently on track with interviews nearing completion. Hopefully next week is the intent. And it's still anticipated that the review findings will be tabled at the next meeting of this group in August for consideration, of course, by the committee. A few other things to flag as well. There's been some close collaboration between the partnership and the Canterbury Mayoral Forum, in particular around the Waitaha regional housing strategy and supporting their work, as well as have recently been invited into the working group on the Canterbury regional deals as well to support that work, but also to represent, I suppose, the partnership in that discussions as well. We've talked a little bit about MRT has come up a lot here, but just wanted to circle back again in terms of the Te Waiha's infrastructure priorities program. Late last year, we submitted an application for MRT as kind of on behalf of the partnership for its consideration there. That application is being assessed, and we hope to find out the outcome of that assessment at the middle of this year, so probably in the next couple of months. I think they've got a lot, and they're obviously working on the National Infrastructure Plan as well, which this links into, so they're kind of quite tied together. But also in April, I think, as you may remember last meeting, we talked about the building blocks of the public transport network, with PT Futures really being the key building block, fundamental for MRT to progress. In that context, PT Futures program was also submitted as part of a second phase of applications invited by Te Waiha in respect to infrastructure priorities programs. That's made, and we should find out the outcome of that application and process towards the end of this year as well. Just flicking through as well, just checking this last one thing. There's the budget outline there as well in terms of the Secretariat. There will be a modest carry forward of $40,000 from this year into the next, and the balance of that will be approximately $160,000 in the Secretariat's operating budget will be returned to partners this year. And this carry forward effectively that we've got, modest as it is there to cater for any unbudgeted outcomes from the partnership review, and that falls into next financial year. And that's just, I suppose, a kind of a carry forward there as well. On that note, other points?
Just a question on the MRT funding. Does that, in terms of what Sarah asked earlier on, is that funding anticipated? Yeah, like what's our plan B, I suppose, if we don't get that?
Through the chair, Te Wahanga and the Infrastructure Priorities Program isn't a funding stream.
Okay.
But what it does is it's looking at infrastructure projects of national significance. Cool. So in other countries, including Australia, where Infrastructure Australia, they have something similar. Priority list, I think, is how they refer to it. Yep. And effectively, that gives that advice into government about what's a good investment for their funds.
Might help us with future funding. Okay,
exactly.
Cool. Good. Any other questions, Dan?
Just the question around the hand back to the partners pro rata amount. The reason for that? Always aware it's much more difficult to get money again. So rather than holding it aside, was there a rationale for that that was...
Through your chair, there has been, last couple of years, there's been a carry forward each year, an underspend. So in discussions with CEs, it was felt that given the various pressures on other budgets, better to draw a line in the sand. It will start again. There is it's the operating budget, so there will still be drawn upon and invoiced every quarter, but it just allows a little bit of kind of, I think, paring it back and then to move on from that as well in terms of a budgetary sense.
Any other questions? No? All good. Are you moving this one again, Phil? Halfway. Any seconder? Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Any discussion? Doesn't sound...
Just to note the appreciation of looking at the operating costs, because it's substantial for all of us. So, and note the return. Thank you for that explanation. But when we look through the Secretariat, it's not an insignificant budget there, but noting those savings always make a difference, especially when we're in a tight fiscal environment. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So if there's no other speakers, all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. I think that's our last item. So our next meeting is the 8th of August. And this is our karakia to close if people want to join in with me. But just before we do that, thanks everybody. Thanks to all the staff that have worked on all the papers and the continuing work on all of our work programs. Thanks to all our elected members being here. Richard, again, thanks for staying in for your colleagues. Let's finish off our meeting. So if you want to say with me, ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, hui e, tākia. Kia ora koutou, thank you.